Welcome back, everyone. This week, the long-awaited discussion of the St. Joe Company, ticker symbol JOE, a Florida land developer with more land than that of Chicago. So let's get into this. If you want to read this for yourself or click on the links in this article, in the video description, there'll be a link to this article. Go ahead and read it. Go ahead and subscribe. Let's get into this. St. Joe is a real estate development, asset management, and operating company. They are doing practically all of their business in the Florida Panhandle. With that one sentence, confusion is already sown. Why? Because humans read it. That's why. And what better creature to bring bias and fallacy into the equation? What is the Florida Panhandle, after all? That's a serious question. Humans have preconceived notions. At the risk of sounding woke, people do have unconscious biases. Once people hear certain words, they check out mentally. They make automatic associations and assumptions. So, like I asked, what is the Florida Panhandle? Is it the Emerald Coast where their Gulf's glistening emerald green waters welcome you for a luxury stay? Or is it a strip of surf and sand to get your party on from Pensacola to Panama City? Or is it the redneck Riviera abused by out-of-town partiers and drunkards? Or perhaps it's a quiet retirement establishment. There's a reason why companies spend so much on marketing. Perhaps due to mainstream media, you think this is the Florida Panhandle. Florida man caught on security camera licking doorknob for 3 hours. Florida man claims he only drank at stoplights and not while driving. The human condition. Bear with me, especially if you're listening to this. Just put it on 1.5 times speed or something. Human propensity is to create stereotypes via hasty generalizations, not keeping constant their comparisons and controlling for variables, conflating categories and false dichotomies. To most, Florida consists of swampland, Disneyland, and Miami. Under this sort of framing, St. Joe must be swampland. Now, you might say that no one would be that stupid, in which I would reply, you're sadly mistaken. Most people jump to conclusions and make hasty generalizations. The problem is that once people get a narrative in their head, they won't allow themselves to be confused with the facts, because new facts means that the narrative needs to change. The problem with that is that people attach their identity and egos to narratives. They convince themselves that they believe in a narrative because they're a good, virtuous person. And how are they supposed to reconcile a new narrative while their ego is attached to an old narrative? The answer is cognitive dissonance, or dare I say, intellectual honesty. Which is to say that if you change the facts, you change the narrative, and this forces people to change. And people don't like to change. The problem with this is that people are intellectually lethargic and personally incredulous. Another issue is that people aren't incentivized to change their beliefs until a situation forces it upon them. This means that the general populace will maintain their bigoted beliefs about Florida because it doesn't serve them to change. Demonstrating tribal allegiance by either talking down on that Republican state or laughing at the Florida man stereotype brings people closer together. This means that people are incentivized, not disincentivized, to remain myopic and foolish. It causes them to miss an opportunity rather than cost them a current benefit. It causes them to miss a current opportunity rather than cost them a current benefit. This is a simple omission versus commission dynamic, and people are more than happy to sin insofar as it falls into the category of omission. Now that we know this of the human condition, what might we conclude? Number one, the most exciting returns, quote, the most exciting returns are to be had from an asset class where those who know it best love it least because they have been hurt the most. End quote. That was Don Cox. And anyone who listens to the Market Huddle should be familiar with that quote by now. Number 2, my psychoanalytical investigation of the human condition also aids us in understanding why people are still referencing a short report that was published over a decade ago. It's a good read. You should go read it. Field of Schemes. If you build it, they won't come. Greenlight Capital Management. No fool, by the way. He was just recently on Bloomberg podcast too. That's well worth a read or listen. My apologies. That's a side note though. Back to the article. That short report was largely right at the time of its publication. Notice how I used the past tense in that sentence. The company was being run as a bust out, a control fraud, a principal agent problem to enrich the insiders and act as a supplemental lifestyle company by auctioning off its land. Now that might be a bit of an oversimplification, but not too much. More recently, if 6 years is recent, another popularly referenced short report was published on them. Here it is if you wish to review it. Link in the description, go over to the article, click on it, it'll take you to it's Kearsdale Capital if you're interested. So here you have the mid-twit, flywheel effect, and of course the guy in the middle, they sell houses in the swamp. My explanation of the human condition helps you better understand why these outdated short reports are still being referenced. People are intellectually lethargic and thus make appeals to authority, which David Einhorn is. People also latch onto stories and don't relinquish them, regardless of whether the stories changed or not. Master plan communities in the real estate sector are boring, and people want exciting growth stocks. Oh, what's that? Let me check my notes. Oh, apparently St. Joe grew revenue 54% year over year. But who cares? It's still boring. And that boring 54% revenue growth year over year brings us to the next section, the numbers. A problem that people have with St. Joe is their erratic earnings, especially in regards to their residential segment. Another problem people have is not recognizing that it's more than just a residential play. The below spreadsheet demonstrates their growth over the last several years. As a public service announcement, if you notice something wonky with the older real estate revenue figures, it's because I added timber revenue in with it due to St. Joe doing that with the last 3 year figures, the last 3 years worth of figures in the recent filings. This will just help us keep constant our comparisons, controlled for variables when looking at the numbers pre-2020 versus post-2020. It's not a huge deal, but if you're paying attention, you'll notice that and then wonder what's going on. So that's what's going on. So here's the numbers. Real estate revenue, see that in dollar terms, year over year change, in percentage terms, and same with hospitality, same with leasing, and then total revenue as well. And hospitality is what I care about. I think I mentioned that later on, but all these numbers pretty much are looking good to me. Anyway, let's get into this. I'm not in St. Joe for the residential real estate, although them developing that is crucial for the thesis to play out. I'm in St. Joe for the hospitality and leasing commercial segments, and oh boy have those segments been doing well. Even in 2022, when real estate fell 30% year over year, the hospitality and leasing commercial segments helped cap the full year loss to only 6% loss. On a trailing 12-month basis, it's trading at 25 times funds from operation. Is that rich or is that cheap? I don't know. What I do know is that on average, over the last 6 years, St. Joe has grown their revenue by 27.55%. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But on average, 6 years, 27.5%. What multiple does that deserve? You tell me, or you tell yourself. Let's not forget that Jorge Gonzalez or George Gonzalez, became CEO in 2015, and that the Bay Walton sector plan's genesis was the same year, 2015. It takes time to build a master plan community. A theme that keeps popping up in this article is one of patience, which will be difficult for many as the average watch time per video view on TikTok is 3 to 5 seconds. So, who is St. Joe? St. Joe is a master plan community developer in the Panhandle of Florida. The phrase master plan community isn't something to glaze over. The problem with such a phrase is that it requires a long-term vision, not just for the developers, but the shareholders. In today's day and age of free attendees, rocket ship emojis, and hedge fund redemptions, no one has time for a long-term vision. St. Joe's land bank is roughly 168,000 acres. That's their first PR mistake. People don't do acres, they do square miles. And even then, people are terrible at measurements. 168,000 acres is equivalent roughly to 264 square miles. Yet again, what does that mean to you? To you, the listener, how many square miles is the city or town you live in? That's my point. Let's put that into comparison with some cities you might be familiar with in square mile terms. Chicago, 227 square miles. So don't forget, St. Joe is 264 square miles of land. Chicago is 227 square miles. So right there, that's a 40 square mile reduction. New Orleans, 169. Corpus Christi, 162. Denver, 153. Raleigh, 149. Las Vegas, 141. Atlanta, 135. Tampa, 113. Sioux Falls, 82. Miami, 36. New York, 469. People don't know how big an acre or square mile is, let alone 10, 100, or 1,000. So to say 168,000 acres or 264 square miles literally means nothing to people. But to say that they own the equivalent of 2 Atlantas, 7 Miamis, or half a New York City gets people's attention. They operate in 3 segments: residential, hospitality, and commercial. Hospitality is what I care about. What might hospitality entail, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I have a screenshot right here. And I'll just read it to you. Hotel operations, food and beverage operations, golf courses, beach clubs, retail outlets, golf front vacation rentals, management services, marinas, and other entertainment assets. The hospitality segment generates revenue from membership sales, golf courses, lodging at our hotels, short-term vacation rentals, management of the Pearl Hotel prior to acquisition of December 2022, food and beverage operations, merchandise sales, marina operations, including boat slip rentals, boat storage fees, and fuel sales, charter flights, other resort and entertainment activities, and beach clubs. So that's the hospitality. Their hospitality is increasingly becoming a larger part of their total revenues, and that's at a time where their other segments are growing too. It's not as though some segments are shrinking and thus allowing hospitality to disproportionately represent revenues. Who and what is St. Joe, and what are they trying to accomplish? I guess I'll just read this. Strategy. St. Joe believes its long-term, owner-oriented capital and management allows us to optimize the value of the Northwest Florida real estate by developing residential, hospitality, and commercial projects that meet growing market demands. This strategy is designed to provide opportunities to build recurring revenues and enterprise value for the foreseeable future. That it is, because they still have a lot to do. So that's what they do. They build stuff. How about that? They're a master plan community developer. The name of the game is to build houses amenities in CRE, commercial real estate, and collect recurring revenues on the amenities in CRE. The issue and conundrum is that it's difficult to sell amenities in CRE without homeowners, i.e. consumers. And it's hard to sell houses when there's nothing around for them to do. Jobs to work or general infrastructure. The lead time on projects can take years. Trails, golf courses, marinas, etc. In the meantime, the property is less desirable since it's lacking such things, but as more people move in and the more amenities there are developed, the more value of the surrounding land is worth. At some point, critical mass gets hit, enough momentum is built that it creates a center of gravity. It is my belief that we are at that and actually past that point. 2020 was the last time that St. Joe reported 4 segments. Inflection point? Question. Right? Because they shoved timber into residential, and that's because timber matters less. That old-timey, they just sell plots of land and do timber stuff, those days are gone. We've pivoted. A pivotal moment has occurred, okay? Started in 2015, you could say. Then it got a good boost in 2020, and it's been running hard. Since then, they now report residential, hospitality, and commercial. You'll be hard-pressed to find any meaningful rural land sales on their behalf recently, and the days of old when they were in the timber business aren't completely gone, but are dwarfed by their 3 segments they report. I try to take notice when numbers start positively inflecting and when all of management's hard work starts paying off, which was a few years ago, by the way, not now. That was then. You could say I'm just noticing, even though I've been in St. Joe for a year. Cup of Coffee Capital started January 1st, 2023, after all. I digress. Some say that the Florida's Panhandle is becoming an emerging industrial market. That's worth thinking about. Link in the description below. Population growth, airline traffic, and house prices. Oh my. Let's take a look at the map below. Let me zoom in for you. This section honestly might be better if you go over and just read this thing, but stay watching so then that way the algorithm will rate this video better. Let me zoom in for you. And what you'll notice is that's Walton, Bay, and Gulf County. Dark blue, Walton, light blue, Bay, red, orange, whatever you want to call that, let's not have that debate right now, is Gulf. You might be concerned about that red, but I'm not. That's Gulf County. And I'm concerned with the Bay-Walton sector plan. So that's Walton, Bay, and Gulf County, Florida, which is where 80% of the real estate is located. This is quite relevant due to their Bay-Walton sector plan. This is a long-term master plan that includes entitlements and legal rights to develop over 170,000 residential units and over 22 million square feet of retail, commercial, and industrial use on approximately 110,500 acres of their land holding. That accounts for roughly 65% of their entire land portfolio. For those of you who are color agnostic and don't like pretty pictures, how about some numbers? The growth rate is well above the country's average. And yes, I also notice that the growth rate is slowing, but that's in part the consequence of base effects, and nothing goes up in a straight line. At some point, the rate of change slows. I'm not concerned about that, however. So here's Walton County, Florida. Look at this if you want to see the growth rate. I try to be transparent in my research because there is a whole mishmash of convoluted, contradictory data out there. So the above chart shows what it shows. And then I came across this chart. Now, so they're both Walton. But the second chart shows a much different figure. This one's showing 5.6% growth in 2021. This initial one that I came across is showing 2.69% growth. So that's quite the discrepancy, people. In case you don't know, it is. One chart says 2.6. Well, I think I got that wrong. Anyway, one chart says 2.69 growth for One chart says 2.77% growth from 2020 to 2021, and the other chart says 5.6%. That's either a 50% haircut or a 100% overestimation. I'm not one to appeal to authority, nor am I one to ignore the reality of the problems associated with someone grading their own homework. I have settled on the second chart being true due to the following quote-unquote official chart. You know, the Fred's official, so official like a referee with a whistle, so that's what I'm going with. This is all to say that even the wrong and lower estimates of population growth are still superior to the vast majority of the United States. Let's switch gears and take a look at Northwest Florida Beach's International Airport Activity Report. We also see a positive trend. Total passengers is directionally positive going back to 2017. Bear in mind, before looking at this, I pretty much had 3 different articles that I was going to address St. Joe at from different perspectives. And then I realized I'm seemingly never going to publish anything, so I put it all together in this. That's not the relevant part, so I don't know why I told you that. The relevant part is that the last time I really did much updating of any of those articles was, I believe, August, which is why you notice I'm referencing August on these, because it's been a moment. So September, October, November, December still look good. I just didn't bother updating it because that might have been the camel or the straw that broke the camel's back on me publishing this all together. You just never know. So what we're interested at here is total passengers, and it's looking good. As you might have noticed, the total passengers were recorded in August. The reason being is that I started writing this in August, but fear not, things are still doing well. If you don't believe me, then you can read this article. Click on the link. Here's a picture to entice you to read it. Northwest Florida Beach's International Airport hits new heights in 2024 after record-breaking 2023. A lot of record-breaking going on. Maybe I'll remember to reference this in my weekly performance report video. Now, onto house prices. According to this site, I don't know, the pictures were pretty, so I took it from this guy's site. His name is slipping me. Nick Gurley is his name. It's actually a pretty cool site. Like, if you're interested in buying houses in your own state or another state, it's actually a good site to go to and just kind of see what's going on, see what the trends are. It's really nice and smooth and how it puts it together. Maybe there's other sites like it too, I don't know, but actually is a pretty cool site. So, the way I went about this, now into house prices. According to that site, Monroe County, Florida is the most expensive typical home value in the state. That's way down and to the left. We're not talking about the Panhandle right now. Monroe, Florida, close to Miami, down there. Look at the picture. You see it. That's typical home price. $984,000. Walton County, Florida, which is part of the Bay Walton County plan that St. Joe is operating in, which is why it's relevant, has the second highest value. Interestingly enough, it's above Miami-Dade County. So, Walton, Florida, home value, $695,000. The reason I brought up the Monroe is it was interesting and kind of irritated me that Walton County, Florida came in the second place and not first, but makes sense why. Then you have Bay County. These are the house prices. Things aren't as expensive in Bay County, but they're still doing well. Bay County is where St. Joe's Margaritaville is located, and although the typical house price in Bay County is $347,400, St. Joe is selling theirs for 50% over that. Now, of course, that's because they're new, but also nicer. So, in a screenshot, you'll see with an average sale price of approximately $523,000. The 609 homes under contract as of December 31st, 2023, with an average sales price of $523,000. That's looking pretty good. My point is that residential home prices aren't falling off a cliff like the interest rate fanatic Chicken Littles were predicting. The number one rule in real estate is location, location, location. Population growth, airline passengers, and home prices are all converging and act as an indirect synthetic proxy for the opportunities which St. Joe can manifest. You can think of airport traffic as a KPI, key performance indicator. I do. These data points highlight the tailwinds that are in St. Joe's favor. Now, of course, booming geographic growth doesn't necessarily mean that St. Joe will do well. Gross negligence, perverse incentives, and blatant incompetence can ruin the best of situations and can grab defeat from the jaws of victory. That's not my base case. As a matter of fact, that sort of management team got kicked out of St. Joe. What about global warming? What about it? Ah, yes. They're selling in houses and soon-to-be ocean. This is what I got to say about global warming. If you're concerned about owning property by the ocean, then don't. I get it. If the water rises, then problems will happen. Most of their land won't be affected, though. Sure, much of what they've developed in the last few years will be destroyed, but think of it on the bright side. Wherever the new water line rises, it will create a new oceanfront view. And I probably should have, that's worst case scenario. So water levels rising, you have to qualify that. Quantify it, like how much? A foot? 2 feet? 5 feet? 10 feet? If it rises, 5 feet, 10 feet, some things will be destroyed, but other things won't be destroyed. Something sitting on a hill versus a valley that's a quarter mile away from each other will be in different situations now, won't they? And how are you going to measure that? Preemptively. I'm not. And I'm not exactly particularly concerned with that to begin with. Also, by the time that ocean levels do rise to that point, if they do rise to that point, St. Joe will have built out much more of their master plan community, which means that as an impact to revenue, it will be less than if it just happened overnight tonight, let's say. And let's not forget that many of their assets are recently built. This means that they're not built to that means that they are built to the highest and newest standards. Here's a map to make you think I did due diligence on this topic. I'm now professional. See this professional map? I am now a respected authority figure. Put a mask on. Simply put, it's a risk I'm willing to take. In conclusion, 2023 was the year of the new never-happening recession, a banking crisis, and historically normal interest rates. All of these macro factors were supposed to be St. Joe's unraveling, yet the only thing that has been broken were new records. Company record for a single year revenue in hospitality and leasing. New volume record for their residential home site sales. I'll let you think about that. With that all said, I'm done for today. Matter of fact, I just might top off my shares. Cup of Coffee Capital is a reader-supported publication. To receive new posts and support my work, consider becoming a free or paid subscriber. Thank you, and until next time.